Namaskar. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to StudyIQ English. I am Bhuvan as today in this 9 p.m. session, we will take a look at a topic that unites as well as divides. Right. So the focus of our discussion today is going to be sports and geopolitics, the larger theme that we will look to cover. But more specifically, we will seek to understand the recent controversy regarding India-Pakistan, whether both the countries should be playing each other in a multilateral tournament such as the ICC World Cup that is to be held in a few months from now. Good evening, Deepak. How are you? Welcome. So we are going to take a look at that. We'll also take a look at the history of using cricket as a part of diplomacy, especially between India and Pakistan. What's the history of that? And what has been the results so far? Because probably then we will be able to better understand what's India's viewpoint and what's the justification for it. Good evening, SSC aspirant, Ash J, Pratik Jaiswal. All of you are most welcome, guys. Right. So we are going to take a look at that. It's going to be most interesting. So stand by for the next 15-20 odd minutes. Right. So but just before I start this brief session, so we have got this getting started, the P2I that has gone live today. We have had the first orientation session today. So it's never too late. In fact, this is open for the next 2 days only. On the 12th, we close admissions for this, full and final throughout done. So you have 2 days. Go ahead, choose the batch of your preference, the language of your preference, use the code BA Live and begin your UPSC preparation. If you want to join me online on the Telegram channel, this is where you can join me. Scan this barcode and join my Telegram channel. Right. So coming back to the discussion today. So now what has happened is that the Pakistani sports minister, he has gone ahead and claimed that Pakistan is not going to travel to India for the World Cup if India insists on a neutral venue for the forthcoming Asia Cup. Now please understand that the Asia Cup was originally proposed to be held in Pakistan, but after India expressed its reluctance, the Asia Cricket Council, the ACC, decided that okay, we could have it on some neutral venue. However, please realize that this shifting of the venue will have financial implications for the Pakistan Cricket Board, which is why they are quite angry. Which is why now this threat has come that if India does not travel to Pakistan for the Asia Cup, Pakistan will not travel to India for the forthcoming World Cup, the match to be held at the Narendra Modi Stadium in Ahmedabad. Right? So a hybrid model of Asia Cup has been proposed after India's reluctance, and the basic rationale for it, if you look at it objectively, is terror and normal relations don't go hand in hand. It doesn't happen where the victims of terrorism and the perpetrators of terrorism, they sit across the table and decide, okay, when am I going to play on the soil of the perpetrator? That's not how it works, right? Good evening, Jyotirmay, Pratik Jaiswal. Is there any batch for 2026, Pratik? I suggest you go ahead and check out our website. All right. Okay. So we'll go ahead in this discussion. So first, if you look at the history of using cricket as a part of the diplomacy between India and Pakistan, you don't have to really go a lot far. In fact, if you go to the year 1986, you realize that the Indian Armed Forces carried out a massive war game. A war simulation was carried out in the Thar Desert of Rajasthan, and that whole scenario was called as Operation Brastax. Now, such was the mobilization of men and material in this particular year that it was compared to the single largest exercise conducted by any force across the world since the end of World War II. Such was the magnitude of Indian preparation. Right? Close to 5 lakh men were involved in this whole Operation Brastax. Right? K-girl, good evening. So realize this now. So you have Operation Brastax, the single largest mobilization since World War. Naturally, the Pakistan government was absolutely, they were not very excited about it, to say the least. They saw it as aggression, and there was going to be only one winner if it came to a confrontation. In fact, the then Chief of Army Staff, General K.S. Sundarji, he maintains that each and every individual of the Indian Army was involved in this Operation Brastax. Such was the mobilization. So there was obviously political tension that was developing between India and Pakistan. So to defuse it, the military dictator of Pakistan, the then military dictator, we have a different one now. So Zia ul Haq, he comes to India on the pretext of watching a match. The match to be held in Firoz Shah Kotla between India and Pakistan. He comes on the pretext of watching that match, but actually he goes ahead and meets Prime Minister Rajiv Gandhi in an effort to normalize the bilateral relations. That works, but albeit for short term. 2 years later, India suffers the first wave of Kashmir insurgency that begins in 1990. This was the first instance where, using cricket as a diplomatic tool, India was to probably lessen its guard and probably suffer at the hands of Pakistan 2 years henceforth. Right? So let's go forward now. So thereafter you come to the 2004 tour, the famous tour where Virender Sehwag just ransacked the whole stadium with his knocks. Now this was again this tour was a part of Prime Minister Atal Bihari Vajpayee's initiative to normalize the relations. Right? So you had the Indian team that went to Pakistan, played tests, plays ODIs. And thereafter you see that, okay, a lull was achieved. Probably a positive momentum was being built, some might say. However, you will soon realize that once again, India is rebuffed. That our expectations after engaging in a sort of bilateral series, taking the first step, and here is this conversation. The victims of terrorism, the victims of the terrorism sitting at face to face with the perpetrators of terrorism. India still did that. And yet what you find is that just few years later in fact, when after Musharraf visits India in 2005 at the invitation of then Prime Minister Manmohan Singh, and thereafter you have the ghastly Mumbai attacks, the 26/11 that we now know as. Once again, you find that innocent men, women, children slaughtered to death at the hands of a barbarian, backed by a state that uses terrorism as a part of its statecraft, as a part of its official policy. So now one might again argue, what good did come out of playing out of all those series? Eventually, the onus of reducing terrorism is not on us. Engaging on a bilateral basis does us no good whatsoever. What good do we do? Right? So you see that during the World Cup again in 2011, you see the Indian approach has been conciliatory even after repeated rebuffs by Pakistan. So in 2011, you had Gilani who came and met Prime Minister Manmohan Singh, attended the match together in Mohali. So you had all of these, and yet once again what you find is that the 26/11 attacks remain a touch point, remain a source of friction between these two countries, primarily because of the fact that Pakistan refused to address and bring the perpetrators to justice. That they were seen as complicit in this terrorist attack right from day one, and they did nothing to dispel that notion. So once again the question, what good did that come of playing out of all those bilateral series? Nothing, zero. So let's go ahead now. And then you have the turning point in this whole discussion. The whole Indian approach to dealing with Pakistan sees a change. And that comes after the Uri attack, the ghastly again terror attack, the cowardly terror attack on our Indian armed forces, wherein we lose our men. Thereafter, you see Pathankot airbase targeted again, the Pulwama suicide bomber, where we lost 44 brave hearts of the CRPF, and thereafter our counter attack to Pakistan brings this whole relationship to deep freeze. That situation is not normal. It's a proxy war that's playing out, which means it's not normal. You can't have normal relations there. So some might now argue and say, well, we do send our bridge team to Pakistan. We do send our junior teams to Pakistan. Why not the senior cricket team? Well, those individuals forget the sheer fact that the practicality of a cricket tournament, the revenue that it brings in, you cannot compare that to a bridge tournament. The effect, the international recognition that an India versus Pakistan cricket match gets, I'm sure you wouldn't find that many articles on bridge, and that's got nothing to do with bridge as a sport. But the geopolitical ramifications of that cricket match are immense. They go beyond that cricket field. So again, that whole argument is supposedly baseless, because that does not take into the factor that, well, India versus Pakistan match is not just a cricket match, right? So let's go forward. Thereafter, you find that the Indian government goes ahead, removes Article 370, fully within its sovereign right to do so, and yet you find the Pakistan objection to it. In fact, the continued obsession with Kashmir even after Article 370 has been taken care of, right? Hi Arun, welcome, welcome, thank you for your message, thanks, right? So now what we have to realize is that this Pakistan threat, that they will not play in a multilateral series in India, in an ICC series in India. Well, first things first, what do they stand to lose? Number one, revenue. In fact, if India were to not tour Pakistan for the forthcoming Asia Cup, well, Pakistan stands to lose close to $3 million in revenue. So once again, what India is looking to do is draw the wind from under the sails of Pakistan cricket, that we are not going to fund the perpetrators of terrorism in our country, right? So first thing, obviously, that the Indian government looks to do with this refusal to play a bilateral series is take out the revenue from the equation. Thereafter, the much needed respect that the country craves and yet does not get. That this respect and recognition comes when you engage on an equal basis. We are not equal. We are the victims, you are the perpetrators. We always have a moral high ground. We will always have the ability, and in fact the onus of resumption of normal ties lies with the victims, not the perpetrators. That's not common sense, right? So let's go forward. So like I told you, the onus of resumption, you have these individuals that say, well, why doesn't India do it? Well, India should do it, but India should be allowed to do it at its own time and place of choosing. You can't have the perpetrators literally gaslighting the victims, saying, come play with us because you are bringing sports into politics. No. In fact, you brought sports into politics first in 1986. Thereafter, you brought it again in 2004. And what we learned from those incidents have now guided our contemporary policy, our contemporary approach. And India is well within her rights to do that, right? And what is ICC's role? Now this becomes circumspect, because again, this is a point you must consider. When you consider South Africa as an example, when you had apartheid, and yet the international community came together, boycott in several fields, including sports, which finally brought in the change of thought and mindset and the system that existed there. So if the international community can come together, then why doesn't ICC take the lead role in forming a consensus insofar as boycotting a terrorist nation, a nation that promotes terrorism as a part of its statecraft is concerned? Why is India being put in the trial box? That makes no sense, right? And again, has it considered learning from history when South Africa was isolated from international sports in an effort to bring out the change that is required? Let me know your thoughts on this topic, guys. What's the rationale that Pakistan has, if at all? What is India's justification? Like I have told you, I have given you a basic primer on it. And is India's justification okay? Do you agree with that? Because again, this is going to be a topic that is going to be in the news up until, say, the World Cup is played, and thereafter in the coming days and months to come. Right? Thank you so much, guys. Thank you so much for your messages. It's indeed quite interesting. However, it's a polarizing topic for many. Okay, I put this topic on my Telegram channel, which you can join, by the way. And this topic of discussion came from that Telegram channel. So if you want to join me, well, this is the link. Go ahead. And if you like this whole discussion, well, leave me a like. I would most appreciate that. Right? On that note, it's a wrap from Bhuvan Apurva Jha for StudyIQ. Until I see you next time, 9 p.m.